My wife and I had just raised our glasses to toast my hard-earned promotion when the tranquility of our secluded cabin was shattered. The door swung open with a violent bang, and my mother-in-law marched in as if she held the deed to the plate. Ignoring our stunned expression, she sliced through the silence with a sharp, entitled demand. "Where is my bedroom?" There was no transition. The cold Appalachian air rushed in behind her, instantly killing the warmth of the roaring fire we had just built. I stared at Lorraine, then down at the Yale electronic lock on the heavy wooden door. The green light was still fading. She had the code. Claire had given her the code to a cabin we had rented 3 hours away from home. Lorraine didn't wait for an answer. She dragged a massive leather suitcase over the threshold, the wheels scraping aggressively against the original hardwood floors. A heavy designer tote bag was slung over her shoulder, knocking into the door frame. She dropped the suitcase right in the center of the hand-woven rug. "You said this had a master suite and a loft," Lorraine said, not looking at me, only at Claire. "I'm taking the master since my back hurt. The drive up here was miserable." She paused, her eyes finally scanning the kitchen island, locking onto the cutting board and the $120 bottle of Cabernet I had just opened. "You didn't even buy the groceries I like?" I looked at Claire, my wife of 4 years, the woman who had surprised me 2 weeks ago with this exact weekend trip. She had presented it as a peace offering, a way to celebrate my promotion to senior systems analyst, and, more importantly, a chance to reconnect after months of suffocating tension. I had packed my best clothes. I had spent an hour curating a light acoustic playlist that was currently humming from the Bluetooth speaker on the counter. We were finally operating like a team again, or so I thought. "Mom," Claire gasped. Her face flushed a deep, blotchy red, but she didn't move toward the door. She didn't tell her mother to leave. She just stood there, frozen, looking like a teenager who had been caught skipping school. Lorraine ignored the tone. She stepped further into the cabin, taking off her silk scarf and tossing it over the back of an armchair. "Well, is the master upstairs or down?" I had spent 4 years swallowing my pride around this woman. 4 years of Lorraine scrutinizing my finances and treating me like a temporary roommate who had overstayed his welcome. I remembered her leaning against my kitchen counter last Thanksgiving, sipping a mimosa and asking why I was still driving a 2014 Honda. "I bought my first Mercedes at 28, she had noted casually to the room. I remembered her scoffing when she let herself into our house on a Sunday morning, using the garage code Claire refused to change, and found me making breakfast. She actually laughed and told me cooking was for men with weak paychecks. A real provider, she said, covered everything so his wife didn't have to split the mortgage. Every single time I begged Claire to draw a line. Every single time, Claire deflected. She's just a strong personality. That's how she shows her love. You know how she gets. We couldn't even buy a new washing machine without Lorraine interrogating the warranty term. Claire wouldn't make a lateral move at her marketing firm without running the salary past her mother first. Lorraine micromanaged the brand of coffee I drank, the neighborhood we lived in, the way I folded the guest towels, and Claire just sat there, sipping her tea, letting me absorb the disrespect. But this was supposed to be different. This was my weekend, my promotion. "Lorraine," I said, my voice remarkably steady for how fast my heart was hammering against my rib. "What are you doing here?" She finally looked at me. Her expression was completely flat, devoid of any warmth or apology. "I'm spending the weekend with my daughter." "Is that a problem?" "It is, actually," I said. "We rented this place for the two of us." Lorraine scoffed, a short, sharp sound at the back of her throat. "Please, you didn't rent anything. Claire paid for this with her bonus." I turned to Claire, waiting for her to intervene, waiting for her to say, "Mom, this is our private weekend. You need to leave." I was waiting for my wife to choose me. Just once. Claire looked at her mother, then at me. Her eyes darted frantically between the two of us. She took a small, hesitant step forward. She reached out, gently wrapped her fingers around the stem of my wine glass, and slid it out of my hand. She set it on the granite counter next to the cutting board. "It's fine, Mom," Claire said softly, staring at the floor. "I'll take your bags upstairs. We can sleep on the pull-out couch." I stopped breathing. The cabin fell completely silent. The acoustic music seemed to evaporate. The crackling of the fire was the only sound left in the room. I stood there, waiting for the punchline, praying this was some bizarre, poorly executed prank. It wasn't. Claire actually walked over to the heavy leather suitcase, grabbed the handle, and started pulling it toward the wooden staircase. That was it. That was the moment the marriage actually ended. It wasn't a screaming match. It wasn't a thrown plate. It was just the sight of my wife hauling her mother's luggage up the stairs so we could sleep on a lumpy mattress in the living room of our own anniversary trip. It was the absolute breaking point. 4 years of shrinking myself to keep the peace, gone in an instant. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I turned around, walked into the downstairs bedroom where my duffel bag was sitting at the foot of the bed, and zipped it shut. I walked back into the main room. Claire had stopped halfway up the stairs, looking down at me through the wooden slats of the railing. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You two enjoy the weekend," I said. My voice sounded dead, hollow. It didn't even feel like it was coming from my own throat, because I'm filing for divorce on Monday. Lorraine let out a dramatic sigh from the kitchen. "Oh, don't be so dramatic." I didn't look at her. I didn't look at Claire either. I just walked out the front door, letting it slam shut behind me. I threw my bag into the passenger seat of the Honda, started the engine, and reversed out of the gravel driveway. The drive back to Charlotte took exactly 3 hours and 12 minutes. The sun started to set about 40 minutes in, plunging Interstate 40 into a deep, hazy twilight, and then pitch black. My phone sat on the passenger seat, lighting up the dark cabin of the car over and over again. By the time I hit the city limits, there were 47 missed calls from Claire, 14 text messages. I didn't open a single one. My mind was completely blank. A strange, cold clarity had taken over. I was going to go home, pack the rest of my essentials, find a hotel near the office, and call a lawyer first thing Monday morning. I pulled into our driveway in the suburbs of Charlotte, just past 7 o'clock. The neighborhood was quiet, the streetlights buzzing faintly overhead. I parked, killed the engine, and walked up the paved path toward the front door. That's when I heard the rustling in the side yard. I stopped. I looked past the wooden gate that led to the backyard. The motion sensor floodlight above the patio had clicked on, casting a harsh white glare across the lawn. There was a man standing near the back deck. I left my bag on the porch and walked quickly through the side gate. The man was in his late 50s, wearing a gray polo shirt and khaki. He was holding a clipboard in one hand and aiming a small digital laser measurer at the corner of our house with the other. The little red dot bounced off the vinyl siding. "Hey," I called out, my voice sharp. "Can I help you?" The man jumped slightly, lowering the device. He turned around, squinting against the floodlight. "Oh, sorry to startle you. You must be the husband." "I'm the homeowner, I said, stepping onto the grass. Who are you and what are you doing in my yard? He relaxed his shoulders and offered a brief professional smile. Stellan, I'm the appraiser. Mrs. Drent's office arranged for me to come by before the sun went down. I was told no one would be home until Sunday, so I let myself through the gate. Apologies if I intruded. The cold clarity in my chest turned into something heavy and sick. Mrs. Drent, Lorraine, an appraisal, I repeated slowly. For what? Stellan looked down at his clipboard, flipping a page. Just a standard valuation for the deed transfer, finishing up the exterior measurement for the trust documentation. He looked back up at me, his smile faltering slightly as he read my expression. I was told you were fully briefed, sir. I can come back next week if there's a scheduling conflict. No, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. No, you're fine, Stellan. Finish what you need to do. I turned around and walked back through the gate. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the dark, silent house. I didn't bother turning on the hallway lights. I bypassed my pack bag on the porch. I didn't go to the bedroom to get clothes. I went straight down the hall to Claire's home office. The room smelled faintly of her vanilla reed diffuser. I sat down in her ergonomic chair and wiggled the mouse. The dual monitors flared to life, illuminating the room in a harsh blue glow. Claire was notoriously bad about computer security. She never logged out of her desktop profile. I opened her file explorer. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but Stellan's words echoed in my ears. Deed transfer, trust documentation. I clicked through her documents folder. Nothing but marketing spreadsheets and recipe PDF. I went to her desktop, just shortcuts. I minimized everything and stared at the background. A photo of us from our honeymoon in Mexico. I right-clicked the desktop. I checked the hidden items. A translucent folder appeared in the top right corner. It was simply titled L_docs. I double-clicked it. Inside were dozens of saved email threads, neatly exported as PDFs, alongside several scanned legal documents. I opened the first PDF. It was an email chain dating back 3 months between Claire, Lorraine, and a local real estate attorney named Sullivan Fairfax. I started reading. I read every single line. The words on the screen began to blur, then sharpen with absolute, brutal clarity. This wasn't about a ruined cabin weekend. Lorraine hadn't just crashed our romantic getaway to be annoying or to assert dominance. The emails detailed a meticulously crafted, step-by-step plan. Claire was quietly working with Sullivan Fairfax to transfer the deed of our house, the house we had bought together, the mortgage we split, into an irrevocable trust. The trust was entirely controlled by Lorraine. I scrolled down to a highlighted section in an email from Sullivan. It outlined the exact financial mechanics. By executing a quitclaim deed under the guise of estate planning, Claire was effectively stripping me of my share of the property, my $85,000 in home equity. Poofgone transferred into a vehicle where Lorraine held the keys, and I had absolutely zero legal standing. I opened another email. This one was from Claire to her mother, dated just last Tuesday. I booked the A-frame in Asheville for the weekend. I told him it was to celebrate his promotion. We'll leave Friday morning. That gives Stellan the entire afternoon and evening to do the full exterior and interior walkthrough without him getting suspicious and asking questions. I left a spare key in the lockbox for Stellan. You can drive up Friday afternoon and meet us there. Once the appraisal is filed on Monday, Sullivan can finalize the trust, the romantic mountain trip, the $120 wine, the acoustic playlist, the sudden desire to reconnect. It was all a decoy. It was explicitly designed to get me out of my own house so a stranger could measure my property to help my wife and her mother steal my life saving. Lorraine wasn't just an overbearing mother-in-law. She was attempting a hostile financial takeover, and my wife was the inside man. I didn't feel angry. I felt like the floor had opened up and swallowed me. I sat in the blue light of the monitors, listening to the faint hum of the computer tower. I opened a new browser tab, logged into my personal email, and attached every single PDF from the hidden folder. I sent them to myself and then to a backup cloud drive. I permanently deleted my login track, locked the desktop, and stood up. I needed a lawyer. Now, not Monday. Now, I pulled out my phone. I ignored the notification banner showing 52 missed calls from Claire. I searched my contacts for Emery Novak, an old college friend who had gone into family and property law. I knew it was Friday night, but I didn't care. I hit dial. He answered on the fourth ring, music thumping in the background. Holt, man, it's been a minute. Everything all right? Emery, I said, pacing back out into the hallway. I need your help. My wife is trying to quietly transfer the deed of our house into an irrevocable trust controlled by her mother. I just found the emails. They had an appraiser here today while I was out of town. The music in the background instantly cut out as a door shut on Emery's end. His voice shifted from casual to razor sharp. Are you at the house right now? Yes. Did you sign anything in the last 6 months? A quitclaim? A post-nup? Anything remotely related to the property? No, absolutely nothing. But my name is on the mortgage and the deed. Okay, Emery said, his tone dead serious. If you didn't sign anything, they can't legally execute the transfer without committing fraud. But if they file the paperwork, untangling it will drain you in legal fees. You have copies of the emails? I forwarded everything to my personal drive. Good. Don't confront her yet. Don't tell her what you know. But listen to me very carefully. If they're making a move on the house equity, they might make a move on the liquid asset. Where do you keep your cash? We have a joint checking and a high-yield joint savings account with Chase, I said. Most of our cash is in the saving. About 60 grand. Check it. Right now, Emery ordered. Put me on speaker. I pulled the phone away from my ear and tapped the speaker icon. I swiped out of the phone app and opened the Chase banking app. The blue screen loaded, the little white circle spinning in the center. My thumb hovered over the biometric scanner. It's loading, I told Emery. If the money is there, we transfer half to an individual account tomorrow morning. If it's not, Emery trailed off. The dashboard populated. I stared at the screen. I blinked, my thumb completely still against the glass. The joint checking account had $2,410. The high-yield joint savings account had a balance of $0. I clicked into the savings account to view the transaction history. There was only one line item at the top. Thursday, 10:14 am. Wire transfer outbound. $61,500. Destination, Drent Holdings, LLC. Emery, I whispered, the walls of the hallway suddenly feeling very narrow. What does it say? It's gone, I said. All of it. She wired it to an LLC yesterday morning. Emery let out a long, slow breath through the phone. It sounded like static. Okay, hold, don't panic. Drent Holdings is obviously Lorraine. They moved the cash to secure it before they hit you with the trust paperwork on Monday. It's textbook asset hiding, but because it's a joint account, she technically had the authorization to initiate negotiate the wire. It's $60,000, Emery. That was our emergency fund. That was my bonus. I know. And a judge is going to look at a $61,500 wire to her mother's LLC right before a divorce filing and see exactly what it is. It's marital waste. It's fraud. We will claw it back in discovery. But right now, tonight, you have to assume you are completely financially exposed. Do you have a personal credit card? One without her name on it? I pulled the phone away from my ear, put it on the desk, and pulled my wallet out of my back pocket. I thumbed through the plastic. I have a Capital One card. It's just mine. Limit is 10 grand. Balance is 0. Good, Emery said. That's your lifeline. Do not use the joint checking for anything. Do you have your passport, your birth certificate, tax returns? I looked toward the closet in the guest room across the hall, where we kept the fireproof lockbox. I think so. Get them, Emery ordered. His voice was all business now. The old college buddy completely replaced by the attorney. Get your passport, your social security card, your birth certificate, and any physical financial documents you can carry. Pay stubs, W-2s. Do not take anything that belongs solely Claire. Don't touch her jewelry. Don't take her passport. If you do, her lawyer, and it sounds like Sullivan Fairfax is already on retainer, will claim you're stealing her property. Just take what is yours. Should I print these emails? I asked, looking back at the glowing dual monitors. No, you already forwarded them. Leave the computer exactly how you found it. We need her to think the plan is still running smoothly. If she knows you know about the trust and the money, she might accelerate things. She could claim domestic disturbance to get a restraining order and legally bar you from the property before Monday. I've seen it happen. You need to be a ghost this weekend. A restraining order. The idea that my wife of 4 years would accuse me of violence just to steal my house equity made my stomach turn. But an hour ago, I wouldn't have believed she'd drain our life savings. Either the woman I married was gone. In her place was just a business partner executing a hostile buyout. Where do I go? I asked. Go to a hotel. Somewhere cheap and corporate where you can blend in. Pay with your personal Capital One card. And Holt? Yeah, you have to text her. I stared at the phone. The notification banner was now up to 58 missed calls. I can't talk to her right now, Emery. If I hear her voice, I'm going to lose my mind. You don't have to talk to her, but you have to text her. If you disappear completely, she'll panic and check the desktop to see if you found the folder. You need to give her a plausible reason for leaving the cabin that makes her think she still has the upper hand. Like what? Tell her you overreacted. Tell her you were just stressed from work and seeing her mother pushed you over the edge. Say you drove back, you're embarrassed, and you checked into a motel to cool off. Tell her you'll talk to her on Sunday when she gets back. It felt like swallowing glass. Apologizing to the woman who was currently trying to ruin me. Validating the mother-in-law who had orchestrated the whole thing. Okay, I said, my voice hollow. I'll do it. Call me tomorrow at 9 a.m., Emery said. We're going to start drafting the injunction to freeze the assets, and I'll find a way to stall the county clerk on that deed transfer. The line went dead. I sat in Claire's home office for another minute, the silence of the house pressing against my eardrum. Then I stood up and walked to the guest room. The fireproof lockbox was tucked in the back of the closet, hidden beneath a pile of spare winter blankets. I pulled it out and keyed in the code. The latch popped. I opened the heavy lid. My passport was there. My birth certificate was there. The deed to the house, the titles to both of our cars, and the folder containing our last 3 years of joint tax return were gone. I stared at the empty space at the bottom of the box. They had really planned everything. Lorraine must have taken the physical documents weeks ago. I grabbed my passport and birth certificate, shoved them into my jacket pocket, and closed the box, burying it back under the blanket. I walked out to the living room and picked up my phone. I opened my messages. Claire had sent 22 texts. Holt, please answer. Where are you going? Mom didn't mean it like that. She just drove a long way. You're scaring me. Please call me back. We can talk about this. Holt, please. I stared at the gray bubbles. The manipulation was staggering. You're scaring me. She was setting a narrative. She was creating a digital paper trail showing an erratic, frightening husband abandoning his wife in the woods. Sullivan Fairfax would love to show these texts to a judge. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I took a deep breath, channeled every ounce of professional detachment I possessed from my years in corporate and typed, I'm sorry. I overreacted. Work has been incredibly stressful, and I just snapped when I saw your mom. I shouldn't have left like that. I'm embarrassed. I drove back to town and checked into a motel near the highway just to sleep and cool off. Stay at the cabin. Enjoy the weekend. We can talk on Sunday when you get back. I hit send. I watched the screen. 3 gray dots immediately appeared. She was staring at her phone, waiting. The dots vanished. Then they appeared again. Okay, she replied. I understand. I love you. Get some sleep. I love you. I locked the screen, grabbed my duffel bag from the porch, and walked back out to my Honda. The neighborhood was dead quiet. The appraiser, Stellan, was long gone. I threw my bag into the passenger seat and started the engine. I drove to a generic Hampton Inn, right off Interstate 77, about 20 minutes away from my house. It was a place business travelers stopped for the night. Featureless, anonymous, safe. I walked into the brightly lit lobby. The kid behind the counter was watching something on his phone and barely looked up when I approached. Need a room for 2 nights, I said. Sure thing. Just need an ID and a credit card for the incidentals. I handed over my driver's license and my Capital One card. He clacked away on his keyboard, swiped the card through the terminal, and waited. The machine beeped, a sharp, negative tone. The kid frowned. He looked at the screen. Sir, it says, decline. That's impossible, I said. It's a personal card. It has a 0 balance. Let me try the chip, he muttered, shoving the card into the bottom slot. We waited in silence. The machine thought about it for 5 seconds. Then it beeped again. Same sharp tone. Still declined, the kid said, sliding the card back across the laminate counter. Code 05. Do not honor. You got another card? My hands felt numb. I pulled out my phone and opened the Capital One app. The green screen loaded. I clicked on my credit card account. It didn't show a balance. It didn't show a limit. It showed a red banner across the top of the screen. Account closed. This account has been closed at the request of the authorized user. If you believe this is an error, please contact customer support. I stared at the words. Authorized user. I had added Claire as an authorized user on the card 2 years ago so she could buy airline tickets for a work trip when her own card was compromised. I had completely forgotten about it. She hadn't used it since. But as an authorized user, she had the ability to call the bank and report the card lost, stolen, or request an account closure. She had closed it. While I was driving back in the dark, ignoring her calls, she hadn't just been texting me to say she was scared. She had been on the phone with Capital One, cutting off my last line of credit. I had exactly $42 in cash in my wallet. Sir? The kid at the desk asked, looking at me with a mixture of annoyance and pity. You have another card? I shook my my head slowly, feeling the heat rise in my neck. The lobby lights suddenly felt blinding. No, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. No other card. Sorry, I didn't wait for the kid to reply. I grabbed my license and the useless plastic off the counter, turned around, and walked back out through the automatic sliding doors. The night air hit me, damp and freezing, but I barely felt it. I walked to my Honda, opened the door, and dropped heavily into the driver's seat. I didn't turn the key. I just sat there in the dark, staring at the faint glow of the dashboard clock. It was 8:41 p.m., $42. That was my net worth. 12 hours ago, I was a senior systems analyst, celebrating a promotion, holding a glass of expensive wine in a luxury cabin, secure in the knowledge that I had a home, a marriage, and 60 grand in the bank. Now, I was sitting in a Hampton Inn parking lot, locked out of my own life. The precision of it was what terrified me. Closing the credit card wasn't just a petty jab, it was a tactical strike. Claire knew I'd leave. She knew I wouldn't stay and fight with Lorraine. She knew exactly how I'd react, and she had built a financial tripwire waiting for me when I did. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot. I couldn't sleep on the street. The cops in the suburbs were notoriously bored and would knock on the window of a parked car within an hour. I drove a few miles down the highway until I saw the blue H sign for the County Memorial Hospital. I pulled into the visitor parking deck, drove up to the 4th level where it was mostly empty, and backed into a spot facing the concrete wall. Nobody questions a car parked overnight at a hospital. People sleep in their cars here all the time, waiting for bad news. I turned off the engine. The silence was absolute. I grabbed my duffel bag from the passenger seat, pulled out a thick wool sweater I had packed for the mountain, and draped it over myself like a blanket. I reclined the seat as far back as it would go. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the laser pointer dancing across the vinyl siding of my house. I saw Claire's hand gently taking the wine glass from my fingers. I saw the $0 balance on the Chase app. The cold seeped through the floorboards around 3:00 am. I shivered uncontrollably, my knees pulled up to my chest, my breath fogging the windows. I kept my phone in my pocket to preserve the battery, terrified to look at it, terrified of what notification might be waiting for me next. When the sun finally began to bleed through the gray morning sky, I sat up. Every joint in my body ached. My mouth tasted like stale metal. I turned the key, blasting the heat until the windshield defrosted, and drove out of the parking deck. I stopped at a Quick Trip gas station, used the bathroom to splash freezing water on my face, and bought a large black coffee. I handed the cashier a $5 bill from my wallet. $37 left. I sat in the car, nursing the burning coffee, watching the digital clock on the dash slowly tick toward 9. At exactly 9:00 am, I called Emery. He answered on the first ring. Holt, you at the hotel? No, I said, staring out at the gas pumps. My card declined. She closed my Capital One account. She was an authorized user. I slept in my car at the hospital. Emery swore softly under his breath. It wasn't a professional, lawyerly sound. It was the sound of a friend realizing how outgunned we were. Okay, she's moving fast, but she's leaving tracks. Closing a credit card while emptying a joint account shows clear malicious intent. We can use that. But right now, we need to secure your income. When do you get paid next? The 15th, I said. Next Friday. It'll be my first paycheck with the new promotion bump. Where does the direct deposit go? The Chase checking account. The one she has access to, Emery confirmed. You need to change that today, right now. You need to open a new bank account in your name only, and you need to log into your employee portal and reroute your direct deposit before payroll processes on Monday. I have $37, Emery. Where am I going to open an account on a Saturday morning? A local credit union. They usually only require $25 to open a basic checking account. Find one that's open until noon. Get the routing and account numbers and update your HR portal immediately. Okay, I said, my brain finally latching onto a concrete task. Okay, I can do that. Good, Emery said. I'm working on the injunction for the wired funds. I'm also drafting a formal notice of representation to Sullivan Fairfax. Once I send that, Claire and her mother are legally barred from contacting you directly regarding the assets. They'll have to go through me. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking slightly. Emery, I don't know how I'm going to pay your retainer. Stop, he said sharply. We've known each other for 12 years. We'll figure the money out later. Just get that bank account open. Call me when it's done. I hung up. I searched for credit unions near me and found one about 3 miles away that opened at 9:30 am. I drove over, parked, and waited by the glass doors. I was the first person inside. I sat across from a young woman at a cubicle, handed her my driver's license and $30 in cash, and 20 minutes later, I walked out with a temporary debit card and a printout of my new routing number. I got back into my Honda. I pulled out my phone and opened Safari. I navigated to my company's HR portal, typed in my employee ID and my password, and hit login. The screen loaded, bringing up a secondary prompt. 2-factor authentication required. We have sent a 6-digit code to the mobile number ending in 44. I waited for the text message banner to drop down from the top of my screen. I stared at the time in the upper left corner. 5 seconds passed. 10, nothing. I tapped resend code. I waited again. Still nothing. I frowned, looking at the top right corner of my phone screen to check my signal strength. The signal bars were gone. In their place were 3 letters. SOS. A cold spike of adrenaline shot straight through my chest. I opened my phone settings and tapped on cellular. The network was completely blank. No SIM/network unavailable. I stared at the screen, my breathing suddenly shallow and fast. We were on a family plan. Claire had set it up 3 years ago through Verizon because she got a corporate discount through her marketing firm. She was the primary account holder. She hadn't just closed my credit card. She had suspended my cellular service. I was completely disconnected. I couldn't make calls. I couldn't receive texts. And without texts, I couldn't receive the 2-factor authentication code required to log into my work portal. I couldn't change my direct deposit. Come Friday, my new, higher salary was going to drop directly into the Chase account, and Claire would wire it straight to her mother's LLC the second it cleared. No, I muttered, frantically tapping the screen. No, I needed Wi-Fi. I threw the car into drive and sped out of the parking lot, scanning the road until I saw the familiar green mermaid of a Starbucks. I pulled in, parked haphazardly, and practically ran inside. I didn't buy anything. I just stood by the mobile pickup counter, pulled up my Wi-Fi settings, and connected to the public network. The moment my phone connected to the internet, it vibrated violently in my hand. A flood of notifications cascaded down the screen. Emails, app alerts, calendar reminders. I ignored all of it and opened iMessage, hoping I could somehow text Emery through my my Apple ID. But the first message at the top of the queue wasn't from Emery. It was an email from Claire, sent at 8:15 am. I tapped the mail icon. The message loaded. She had copied Sullivan Fairfax on the email. Holt, due to your erratic, hostile, and threatening behavior yesterday afternoon, my mother and I did not feel safe remaining in isolation at the cabin. We have returned to Charlotte. Your text last night admitting that you snapped only confirmed that we made the right decision to leave. Because I am genuinely fearful for my safety and my mother's safety given your current state of mind, I have had the locks changed on the house this morning. I cannot risk you returning in a volatile state. Your remaining clothes and personal items will be boxed up and placed in the garage, which you can access via the keypad, though the interior door to the house has been secured. Please do not attempt to enter the property. If you try to force entry, I will have no choice but to call the authorities and file a formal protective order. Going forward, all communication must go through my attorney, Sullivan Fairfax, who is copied here. Claire. I stood perfectly still in the middle of the crowded coffee shop. The espresso machines hissed. People chattered around me, laughing, ordering lattes, living their completely normal Saturday morning. The cabin trip, the expensive wine. It really was all a trap. She never intended to stay the weekend. She just needed me to leave first. She needed me to walk out the door so she could claim I abandoned her. She needed me to send that pathetic, apologetic text to Emery's exact specifications, only to weaponize it against me as proof of my volatile state. And now, she was in our house, with her mother, with new lock, using the very home equity she was trying to steal to pay the lawyer who was helping her steal it. I looked down at the paper printout from the credit union in my left hand. I looked at the SOS in the corner of my phone screen. I had $7 in my pocket. I couldn't access my own money. I couldn't secure my next paycheck. I couldn't call my lawyer, and I couldn't go home. I stood in the Starbucks for another 5 minutes, letting the panic wash over me until the cold, analytical part of my brain, the part that got me the senior systems analyst promotion, kicked back in. 2FA is a security protocol. Protocols have bypasses. If I couldn't authenticate externally via text, I had to authenticate internally. My employee badge was in the front pocket of my duffel bag in the car. If I logged onto a hardwired machine physically located inside the company network, the single sign-on system would recognize the internal IP address and bypass the SM's authentication requirement entirely. I walked out of the coffee shop, got back into the Honda, and merged onto I-77 toward uptown Charlotte. The drive took 15 minutes. I couldn't afford the parking garage attached to my office building. The weekend rate was $20 flat, and I only had 37 left to my name, so I parked 6 blocks away in a sketchy gravel lot that charged $5 for the day. I paid with a crumpled $5 bill, shoved the paper receipt onto my dashboard, and walked the rest of the way in the biting morning wind. My office building was a sleek 30-story glass tower. The lobby was completely dead, save for a single security guard reading a paperback behind the marble desk. I held my breath as I approached the turnstiles. If Claire had called my company and somehow managed to get me locked out of here too, I was entirely out of options. I tapped my badge against the scanner. The light flashed green. The glass barricade slid open. I rode the elevator up to the 14th floor. The office was eerily quiet, just the low, constant hum of the HVAC system and the intermittent flickering of motion sensor fluorescent light waking up as I walked down the main corridor. I went straight to my cubicle, dropped into my chair, and woke up my desktop tower. I typed in my credentials. The loading wheel spun. I braced myself for the 2FA prompt. It didn't come. The screen cleared, and my standard desktop populated. I didn't waste a single second. I opened Chrome, navigated straight to the employee HR portal, and clicked into the payroll tab. I deleted the Chase joint account routing numbers and typed in the numbers from the credit union printout. I triple-checked the digit. I hit save. A little green banner popped up at the top of the screen. Direct deposit information successfully updated. I slumped back in my chair, exhaling a breath I felt like I had been holding since last night. Next Friday's paycheck, my new, higher salary, was going to drop safely into an account Claire didn't know existed. I had secured my income. I pulled my desk phone off the hook. It was a standard Cisco IP phone, completely independent of my cell service. I dialed Emery's cell. He picked up on the second ring. Holt, I'm at my office, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the empty floor. I got into the network. The direct deposit is changed. The money is going to the new credit union. Thank God. Emery breathed. That's massive, Holt. You secured the lifeline. Did you get a chance to look at your phone? Did you get her email? Yeah, she shut off my cell service. I can only use Wi-Fi. I saw the email she copied her lawyer on. She changed the locks, boxed up my stuff in the garage, and told me not to come to the house or she'll file a protective order. Listen to me, Emery said, his voice dropping into a deadly serious register. Do exactly as she says. Do not go to that house. Do not even drive down your street. Sullivan Fairfax is a shark, and this is a classic provocation tactic. They want you to show up. They want you to bang on the door or try to use the keypad so they can call the cops, report a domestic disturbance, and get a temporary restraining order on the record. If you get a tro slapped on you, it destroys your credibility in family court, and they can leverage it to force a wildly unequal settlement. I have $7, Emery. All my clothes, my computer, my entire life is in that house. She said my stuff is in the garage. Can I at least go get the boxes? No, Emery said flatly. It's a trap. If you open that garage door, she can claim you tried to breach the interior door. I am serving Sullivan Fairfax with a letter of representation in an hour. Once he has it, I will coordinate a supervised time for you to collect your belongings with a police escort. Until then, you are a ghost. You don't exist. You stay away from her. Okay, I said, rubbing my temples. A dull, throbbing headache was building behind my eyes. What about the 60 grand? Did you file the injunction? Drafting it now. I'll file it first thing Monday morning when the clerk's office opens. We're going to demand a full accounting of Drent Holdings LLC and an immediate freeze of those transferred funds. But honestly, Holt, you need to prepare yourself. Money that gets wired into a private LLC over a weekend has a funny way of getting chopped up and scattered into other accounts before a judge can freeze it. We'll fight for it, but don't count on that cash being available to you anytime soon. I looked out the window of my cubicle, staring at the gray Charlotte skyline. 4 years of saving, 4 years of skipping vacations, driving a decade-old car, and carefully budgeting so we could build a safety net. And Lorraine had just swallowed it whole. I need money to live, Emery. I can't stay at a hotel. My card is closed. I don't get paid until Friday. I'll Venmo you $1,000 right now, Emery said. said without hesitation. Send me the handle linked to your new credit union debit card once you set it up. I don't care how long it takes to pay me back. Get a cheap Airbnb for the week. Buy some groceries. Keep your head down. Thank you. I mean it. I don't know what I would do right now. You'd get crushed, Emery said bluntly. That's what they were counting on. They thought you'd panic, show up at the house screaming, and hand them a restraining order on a silver platter. You didn't. You survived the first wave. Keep surviving. We hung up. I sat at my desk for a moment, the silence of the office pressing in again. I felt a strange, hollow sense of victory. I had outmaneuvered them on the payroll. I had legal representation. I was bleeding, but I wasn't dead. I wiggled my mouse and opened Microsoft Outlook to check if I had missed any urgent work emails while I was driving back last night. My inbox populated. There were 3 new emails. The first was an automated system alert about a server patch. The second was from my manager Soren, sent at 8:45 a.m. this morning. The third was from Paige in Human Resources, sent at 9:02 a.m. My stomach tight. I clicked on the email from Paige first. Hold, please see me in my office first thing on Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. before you log in for your shift. We received a concerning phone call from your wife this morning on the emergency contact line. She indicated that you are currently experiencing a severe mental health crisis and have abruptly abandoned your home. She requested that we disable your building access for your own safety and the safety of your colleagues until you can undergo a psychiatric evaluation. While we do not take marital disputes into account regarding employment, workplace safety is our top priority. We have not deactivated your badge at this time, but I need to speak with you in person immediately on Monday to assess the situation and ensure you are fit to return to your duties. Please confirm receipt of this email. Paige Wyndham, HR Director. The blood drained from my face. I read the email 3 times, the words blurring together on the screen. Severe mental health crisis, psychiatric evaluation, workplace safety. Claire hadn't just changed the locks. She hadn't just stolen the cash. She was actively trying to get me fired. She knew I had just gotten the senior systems analyst promotion. She knew my new salary was the only leverage I had left. By calling HR and weaponizing the concept of workplace safety, she was planting a seed of doubt that could instantly derail my career. If my company thought I was an erratic, unstable liability, they wouldn't hesitate to put me on unpaid administrative leave, or worse, terminate me entirely. Incorporate it. You don't give server access to a guy whose wife claims he's having a violent mental breakdown. I clicked on the email from my manager Soren. It was much shorter. Holt, Paige just called me. I don't know what's going on at home, man, but keep it out of the office. HR is spooked. See me after your meeting with Paige on Monday. We need to talk about whether you're ready for the senior analyst workload. I pushed my chair back from the desk. My hands were shaking. It was brilliant. It was so incredibly, maliciously brilliant. Claire and Lorraine weren't just trying to steal my assets. They were systematically destroying my ability to fight back. No credit card, no cash, no cell service, no home. And now, they were going after my reputation and my paycheck at the source. If I lost this job, I wouldn't just be broke. I wouldn't be able to afford Emery. I wouldn't be able to fight the deed transfer. The trust would go through, the cash would vanish, and I would be left completely ruined with a fabricated history of mental instability to ensure no court would ever side with me. I pulled my keyboard toward me. I had to reply to Paige. I couldn't sound angry. I couldn't sound defensive. If I sounded even slightly unhinged, I would just be proving Claire's point. I took a slow, deep breath, forcing my hands to steady, and began to type. Paige, Soren, I am currently sitting at my desk on the 14th floor, completing the weekend server patch review. I am entirely safe, sober, and healthy. Unfortunately, my wife and I separated last night after I discovered she was attempting a fraudulent transfer of our marital assets. It appears she is now attempting to weaponize the corporate emergency line to damage my employment as part of this process. I have retained legal counsel. My attorney is serving her lawyer this morning. I completely understand the company's obligation to take these calls seriously, and I am more than happy to meet at 8:30 a.m. on Monday to put this to rest. Until then, I will be working. Beth, Holt, I read it twice. It was detached, factual, and completely devoid of emotion. It was the email of a rational, reliable employee, not a man having a severe mental health crisis. I hit send. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed on the desk. A push notification from the Venmo app cut through the empty screen. Emery Novak had sent me $1,000. The note just said, burner phone, food, sleep. I transferred the balance to my new credit union debit card, logged out of my desktop, and left the building. I drove straight to a Target down the highway. I bought a prepaid smartphone for $40, loaded it with a basic data plan, and bought a 3-pack of plain t-shirt, a toothbrush, and deodorant. Sitting in the parking lot, I used my new phone to book a small basement Airbnb in a quiet neighborhood 10 miles away from my house. I didn't hear from Claire for the rest of the weekend. I didn't try to look at her social media. I didn't check my old email. I spent Saturday and Sunday sleeping on a firm mattress in a stranger's basement, eating cheap takeout, and staring at the ceiling. I mourned my marriage, but mostly, I just gathered my strength. On Monday morning, I walked into Paige Wyndham's office at exactly 8:28 a.m. Soren was already sitting in one of the guest chairs. They both looked up, bracing for impact. I sat down, smoothed out the wrinkles in my jacket, and calmly laid out the facts. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult Claire. I just explained that an aggressive divorce was underway, that my assets had been compromised, and that I was securing my own stability. By 8:45 a.m., Paige was nodding sympathetically. Soren just looked relieved that he didn't have to find a new senior systems analyst. We'll document this as a domestic dispute, Paige said, making a note on her legal pad. Your access will remain active. If she calls the emergency line again, we will redirect her to legal. I walked back to my cubicle, feeling the crushing weight of the weekend finally begin to lift. At 11:15 a.m., my prepaid phone rang. It was Emery. We got the injunction, he said, his voice buzzing with adrenaline. The judge took one look at the wire transfer to Drent Holdings and the timestamp of her locking you out of the house. He froze the LLC's account. The 61 grand is locked down. They can't touch a dime of it until the divorce is settled. I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead against my hand. Thank God. It gets better, Emery said. I served Sullivan Fairfax with the notice of representation at 9 o'clock this morning. I included a copy of the injunction and the evidence of the wire fraud. Fairfax called me 20 minutes ago. He was livid. At you? At Claire? Emery laughed sharply. Fairfax is a shark, but he's not a criminal. Claire and Lorraine told him you had verbally agreed to the trust transfer for estate planning purposes, and that you were fully aware of the the asset movement. When he saw my filings, he realized they had lied to him and were using his firm to execute a hostile financial takeover. He formally withdrew as their counsel this morning. I sat up straight in my chair. He dropped them flat, Emery confirmed. They are currently unrepresented. The deed transfer is completely dead in the water. The county clerk rejected the paperwork because of the injunction. You still own half that house, Holt. We're going to force a sale. Take your half of the equity, claw back the emergency fund, and leave them with nothing but the legal fee. What about the restraining order? I asked. The protective order she threatened? She never filed it, Emery said. It was a bluff to keep you away from the house so they could finish the paperwork. But the paperwork is dead. It's over, man. We stopped the bleeding. Now we go on the offensive. The next few weeks were a blur of depositions and aggressive legal maneuvers. Claire tried to call me a dozen times from different numbers once she realized Fairfax had abandoned them and the money was frozen. I never answered. I let Emery handle every single word. When the dust finally started to settle, I found a small, decent apartment on the other side of the city, far away from the neighborhood Lorraine had picked out for us. I bought a new bed. I bought my own grocery. But the moment I knew I had actually survived was that first Friday. I woke up in my new apartment. The morning light was spilling across the cheap hardwood floors. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, opened the app for the local credit union, and logged in. The dashboard loaded. Checking. $3,450 and cent. My first paycheck as a senior systems analyst. Every single cent of it was there, under my name, in an account neither of them even knew existed. I wasn't just a temporary roommate anymore. I was finally the owner of my own life.